Hey, what's going on, everybody? So this is part 2 of the 10K service on my Harley Iron 883. In part 1, we did the fall away procedure and adjusted the steering head bearings. We checked the front tire pressure. We inspected the front brake fluid sight glass. We checked the torque on the front brake reservoir, the cover screws, and we lubed the throttle cables and adjusted the throttle control. So here's part 2, so stick around. So I do need to make one correction from part 1, especially for those of you doing this procedure that have ABS. So I misspoke when I said the torque values for the ABS module here was 9 to 17 foot-pounds. That's not the case. It's actually 36 to 48 inch-pounds. So if you've done the fall away procedure and removed this module here, and you base the torque values on my video, please go back, check your torque values on there, and increase it to 36 to 48 inch-pounds. So in this second video, we'll be doing a few things. In the last video, I said we were going to check the operation of the electrical switches. We didn't do that, so that's the first thing that we're going to do in this video. In this video, we'll also inspect the air cleaner and we'll service it if necessary. We'll replace the engine oil and filter. In fact, that'll be one of the first things that we do. We're going to check the primary chain adjustment, and then we're going to replace the transmission lubricant. So let's get started. So some of you observant subscribers out there may have noticed that I am sporting the D-Cycle t-shirt. D-Cycle shipped this out to me. Nicely done, D-Cycle. It really covers my gut, so very pleased with that. It's a great design. And also, I think it says 217 on the back. I'm pretty sure that's the number of motorcycles that D-Cycle wants to own. So not only is this t-shirt great design, and I will wear it proudly, it's also designed by a really good motovlogger. If you haven't checked out D-Cycle yet, if you haven't subscribed to him yet, go ahead and click on the link below or here in the upper right corner. The other thing that's great about this t-shirt is proceeds go to the Harley organization. It's an organization in D-Cycle's hometown that promotes independence for those with special needs. It's a really good cause, so buy the t-shirt for the great looks, for the motovlogger, and for the great cause. I got a link to the Harley organization down below. Go ahead and check it out. All right, let's get started here. So let's go ahead and check the electrical switches. Pretty simple. Just go ahead and turn things on and check things out. Turn it on, you should hear the fuel pump. So the next thing we want to do is go ahead and begin replacing the oil and the filter. Because it takes a long time for it to drain, we're going to begin that process and start working on some other things. The first step is to run your bike for a few minutes so it's warmed up, so the oil moves through the engine. So let's go ahead and get that started. Open up the garage door. We'll let some of that exhaust clear out of here, so we'll leave the garage door open for a little bit. So as you can see, I've lifted up the bike. For the oil change, you don't need to lift the bike. I lifted it up because we're going to be changing the transmission lubricant, and that requires the bike to be level. I don't have it fully lifted up. I have it lifted up just enough to keep it level. So that's why it's lifted up, but no, you don't need to do this for just an oil change. All right, so the first step with the oil change is to remove the dipstick from the oil tank. Go ahead and do that. The drain hose is right underneath here. The first step is to put some gloves on so I don't get my hands so dirty. To remove this clip here so you can let the hose hang down. All right, so I'll maneuver the hose here so I can let it hang down towards the drain pan. All right, so now I've got the hose routed exactly to where I want it so I can put the oil in the tank. Next step is to loosen up the clamp so the oil can drain out. And with the clamp loosened, just pull the plug and oil starts draining out. So while that oil drains, I'm gonna prep the new filter for installation. We're gonna reuse this box here for a little bit to just kind of store it in, and I'll show you why in just a second. So we're gonna put about 4 ounces of oil inside the filter before we install it. According to the service manual, this allows time for oil to soak into the filter element. Is it necessary? I'm not sure, but the service manual says to do this, so I'm gonna do it. It can't hurt, right? I'm gonna go ahead and set it inside the box, because outside of the box, it's got this 1/16 inch end to it, so you can remove the filter easily with a wrench, and it's just gonna tip over. So we wanna put 4 ounces of oil in it. We want it to stay upright. So just a word about oil. Mobil 1 seems to be the popular brand. Honestly, I go on the internet and I look for the least expensive one that I can have shipped directly to my door. This time just happened to be Castro's Power 1 V-Twin as opposed to the Mobil 1. I changed my oil enough that I'm not concerned about quality. Buy whatever you're comfortable with. There's no hard rules about this. So I'm just gonna put about 4 ounces into the filter. And I'm honestly not gonna measure it. I'm just gonna go ahead and pour in there what I think is about 4 ounces. That seems about right there. And then also what you wanna do is you just kinda wanna take a little bit of oil here. Just put it on the gasket there. There we go, that filter's all set. And that looks like it's drained pretty well. After the oil is all drained out, you wanna make sure you put the plug on the end of the drain hose and then tighten the clamp. There's a torque specs on the drain clamp of, I believe, 6 inch-pounds. Honestly, just go ahead and tighten it with a screwdriver. In this case, a flathead, and you should be good. So what I'm gonna do now, move the oil pan below the filter. So I've not found a really good, clean way to remove the oil filter. I think no matter what you do, you're always gonna get oil onto your bike. You're gonna need a couple rags and a plastic bag to do this process. So what's great about these K&N filters is you can use a ratchet and a 1/16 inch socket to remove these filters because it's got this 1/16 inch end to it. So I'm gonna start by loosening the filter. Just gonna loosen it till it's loose enough to take off with my hand. And what I'll do now is I'm gonna tuck some rags underneath it because this oil is just gonna come spilling out. And it's just one of those things, unfortunately, you gotta deal with. There's just no way to get this off cleanly. Then I'm gonna make a little bit of bag noise. I'm gonna grab my plastic bag here. I'm gonna put it around the filter as far as I can. So I got it tucked in there nicely. Hopefully this will reduce the amount of oil that spills out. And I'm gonna try and do this as quickly as possible. All the while tucking that rag in there further. And if the bag slips off like it is for me, I'm gonna slide it back on there, but it's coming off nicely here. And there we go. And I'll set that aside and go ahead and recycle that at my local car parts store. And the rag that I set underneath here, I'm gonna wipe up any oil that spills out. So with this process, you're gonna have spilled oil. That's just, unfortunately, part of the process. Try and clean it up as best as you can. Not only on your engine and your other bike parts, but also on the floor. You wanna make sure that you don't get it on your tires at all. If you do, you're gonna wanna make sure that you wipe it off your tires. After you're done with the oil change process, check your garage floor, check your tires, make sure they're cleaned off well enough. Let's go ahead and install the new filter. All right, so we got about 4 ounces of oil in there. We put a little bit of oil on the gasket here, and now all we need to do is just go ahead and twist it on. So we'll slide it in there, and we'll turn it clockwise until you feel the gaskets make contact. Now it's made contact. Here, you don't want this really tight, so you're just gonna use your hands as the torque wrench. All you wanna do is, once you feel it make contact, you wanna turn it a 1/4 to 3/4 turn. That should be good right there. That's all you need to do. So next we want to put oil into the oil tank. We're just going to start with 2 quarts of oil. When I first changed my oil on this Harley, I got a cone funnel. Thought that I needed it, but honestly the opening to the oil pan is wide enough. It's just not really necessary. And we'll go ahead and reroute the drain hose back up to the frame, and we'll put the clamp back on. So the next step is to turn the engine on, check to see that the oil pressure indicator turns off at 1,000 RPMs. So let's go ahead and open up the garage door and do that. right, so the next one here is to inspect the air cleaner and service as required. So it's obvious a lot of us have modded our bikes for the stage 1 that included swapping out our air cleaner. Removal installation for each one of our air cleaners is going to be different. Torque values are very similar, but they may differ from manufacturer to manufacturer. Definitely check with your installation instructions about your air cleaner. Or if you still have the stock air cleaner, get the service manual and do kind of the similar things that I'm doing here. But definitely check the steps in the service manual. So I'm going to start by taking off my air cleaner. And I'm just gonna set the air cleaner down for a little bit. I've got a rag here. I'm gonna clean off the front plate inside of it. Get a lot of the oil mist that's collected on there. And then the same thing with the inside where the air cleaner sits. I'm just gonna kind of clean that up a little bit. Get a lot of the oil that's collected there. Now I'm gonna remove the breather bolts. It may not be necessary to do this for the 10K service, but I'm just gonna go one little extra step just to get things cleaned up because I haven't done it in a while. And I'll remove the rest of the mechanism too. I haven't done this in quite some time. And I'm just gonna kind of clean up around here, around the butterfly valve, removing any gunk or dirt, any deposits that have collected that will affect the way the breather bolts work or the operation of the air cleaner. And there's quite a bit over the last 8 months here that's collected or so. If you have compressed air, it might be a good idea to just squirt a little bit of compressed air in here, kind of loosen things up and clean it up a bit. I'm not one of the fortunate ones that has compressed air. One of the investments I'd like to make though. All right, and I'm just gonna wipe things off all around here, get it cleaned up a little bit. Now, before I put things back together, I want to inspect the air filter. I'm gonna clean it up here a bit. There's a few things, bugs and whatnot stuck on the front of it, so I'm gonna kind of just clear that out. I recently cleaned this about 1,000 miles ago because I was having an issue with blow-by. And it's looking pretty good right now. You kind of want to hold it up to the light to see if there's any damage or obstructions. And it's looking pretty good. I'll have another video soon where I'll clean and replace the oil on this filter. But for interest of length of video, I want to keep this one a little bit shorter. I'm not going to show that process now, but I will have a video in the future showing how to clean and re-oil this. I'm going to go ahead and put things back together here. And of course, blue Loctite on everything. So for these K9 filters that a lot of us use, there's this connector point here on the filter. What I like to do when I reassemble this on the bike, and what K9 suggests, is to have this connector point here facing down. So when you reinstall it, try and make sure that it's pointed down like this. All right, that's all there is to that. So next we're gonna change the transmission lubricant. We're not even gonna bother checking it because we know at the 10,000 mile service, changing the lubricant is required. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. And the first step is the most fun because we get to run the motorcycle. So I'm gonna open up the garage door and start the motorcycle. So next we need to open up the clutch inspection cover, otherwise known as the derby cover. But before we do that, we need to get the right foot peg out of the way. So we're just gonna kind of loosen it up and push it out of the way. And that's a 5/16 Allen to remove that. All right, so I'll remove the rear one, leave the front one in, and as you can see, it's starting to loosen up here. And nicely falls away. So now I have full access to the derby cover. I'm actually gonna fully remove the front foot peg because we need access to the drain cover here. We need to open that up. So I'm gonna go ahead and just take this off altogether. Now you're gonna want to be careful with the derby cover. Learn from my mistakes. The screws for the derby cover are definitely not a T25, they're a T27. The T25 fits in there, but you can see it moves about easily. The T27 fits in there perfectly, doesn't move about. I mutzed up one of these bolts. These are really soft bolts, so just be careful, make sure you're using a T27 to remove them. And you wanna remove it in a star-like pattern. So I'll start with the top one here, just loosen it, and then bottom one, just loosen it. And then I'll move over here to the right side, just loosen it, and then the left side here, and then down here to the lower right, and then upper left. Just loosen it. Now they're loose enough where I can kind of just start to loosen them a little bit more in that star-like pattern. Now there's a spring inside here, so you want to be careful when you remove it. You just want to keep your hand over the derby cover so you don't have that spring pop off on you. So I'm holding the cover on while I remove this last one. And I'm going to cautiously remove it so that spring doesn't pop out. And there's that spring right there. So I'm just going to set this upright and aside, and so I don't lose the spring, I'm going to set that aside as well. So this is the clutch diaphragm spring right here. Your lubricant level should be even with that. We're going to need to drain what's remaining in there and then fill it up. And you can use a 5/8 inch wrench to remove the transmission drain plug. But I'm going to get it started with my vice grips because it's a little tight. Ah, there we go. That's a tight mother. That's looking pretty dirty there. So while that drains, I'm just gonna say this little gasket here is called the quad ring. And at this point, it says go ahead and replace that. But honestly, from what I've read and heard, it's gonna be a long time before these go bad. And mine looks pretty good right now. I'm just gonna put a little bit of transmission lube on it when I fill it up. But right now, I just don't see that it's necessary to replace this right now. Don't follow my lead. Follow the directions of the service manual. This is what I'm gonna choose to do with my own bike. So on the drain plug, there's a little magnet that catches all these little metal pieces. You can see that there's quite a bit on mine. And I'm gonna just kind of like scrape it away here. You can see all those little metal pieces. That's what's coming through your transmission. So clean that off. Thank goodness for that. So it's not running through your transmission, it's collecting on the magnet instead. So the torque specs on the transmission drain plug is 14 to 30 foot-pounds. Got mine set now at about 25. So I'll go ahead and torque that up. So just a word about transmission lubricant. I'm using Mobil 1 75W90. I've heard this suggested often in a lot of forums and online. I've heard of riders using the same oil that they use for their engine, and that's the 20W50. I'm gonna play it safe and use a gear-specific lubricant rather than engine oil. So it's got this handy little spigot here, so I'm just gonna clip the top off and begin pouring it in there. Hopefully that will be open wide enough. So the service manual calls for adding 1 full quart of lubricant, which is exactly what this is. But more importantly, you want to make sure the volume is level with the clutch diaphragm spring here. So I'm going to begin filling this up. And just kind of looking at the drain plug, make sure nothing's leaking out. All right, so I've got that filled up. Lubricant volume is level with the clutch diaphragm spring right now. So while I have the derby cover off, I'm gonna go ahead and adjust the clutch cable. As you can see from the last video, the lever and the clutch cable is still loose, so we'll go ahead and adjust that. So we removed that spring earlier. Now, we just want to tighten the resistance screw here, and we're gonna be using a flathead screwdriver. We need to turn it counterclockwise to tight. So opposite from lefty loosey, righty tighty. So we're gonna turn it counterclockwise until we feel resistance right there. And then we're gonna turn it back 1/4 of a turn. Right there. Now we'll reinstall the spring. And it fits perfectly in there. Sometimes when you reinstall this spring, it's not gonna fit perfectly because of the hex shape of the back of the spring. So you just wanna turn it slightly, not very much, just so it fits in that hex slot there. But I kinda lucked out here, it fits perfectly. Now we're gonna reinstall the clutch inspection cover. And if you note on the clutch inspection cover, there's this little bump here that fits in with where the clutch cable extends from. So we wanna make sure we have it set up that way. And you wanna go in a star pattern again when you tighten this. All right, again, these are T27s. Now the torque specs on these is 84 to 108 inch-pounds. I don't have an inch-pounds torque wrench, but if you do a little bit of math, 108 inches is 9 foot-pounds. I still don't have a torque wrench that goes below 10 foot-pounds. So I'm just gonna tighten these by feel, and as I ride, I'm gonna check them occasionally to make sure that they're still tight. Maybe by the next video, I'll have an inch-pounds torque wrench. It's looking pretty good. All right, so now we're gonna wanna make adjustments with this. So just wanna loosen the barrel adjuster here. 9/16 and 1/2, 9/16 on the top, 1/2 on the bottom, and that loosens it enough. So I just wanna start tightening. And while I rotate the barrel adjuster, you could see that the clutch lever is now starting to come away from the grip. That's feeling pretty good. So the free play on the clutch lever should be 1/16 to 1/8 inch. So the space between the lever and the lever housing. And that's just when you begin to touch it. And right now that looks to be a little bit tight. And that looks a lot better. All right, so now I'm gonna rotate the stop nut, and I'm gonna grab my 9/16 and 1/2. 9/16 on the stop nut and 1/2 on the barrel adjuster, and I'm gonna tighten these up, and that feels pretty good. Because my barrel adjuster was a little bit rough, before I put the housing back up, I'm just gonna spray a little Teflon lubricant inside the housing here, and then also on the barrel adjuster and stop nut right there. So just a couple squirts, just so it's doesn't have any issues when I need to adjust it again. So then I'll go ahead and slide the rubber boot over this. Make sure it's on there. Good. That sounds kind of funny. There we go. Wipe things down a little bit so it's not causing any issues. That looks pretty good. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get the clamps back on here. So in the last video, I took the clamps off the ABS lines as well. So I'm gonna clamp that back up too. And that's looking pretty good right there. And I just wanna make sure that I got full lock, nothing obstructing, things move pretty good. That looks pretty good. All right, so the final procedure that we're gonna do in this video is the primary chain adjustment. Now it's really important that the bike does not accidentally start while doing this procedure. So we're gonna take out the main fuse. Now we want to do this procedure with the bike warm. And it's been a little bit since it's run, so I'm going to go ahead and start the bike up, let it run for a little bit, and then we'll begin the procedure. All right, now that we got the bike warmed up, for the primary chain adjustment, it's really important that the bike does not accidentally start. So I'm gonna take out the main fuse. Okay, so this process is easier with the foot peg out of the way. And since we took it off so we can get at the derby cover here to change the transmission lube, we can go ahead and leave that off. until we're all completed. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take off the inspection cover here. And to do that, we're just gonna use a 5/32 Allen wrench to take off 2 screws. And there's this little cover here. To get that off, just grab a small screwdriver and pop her right off, set it aside. All right, so here you can see is our primary chain. And we'll be pushing it up with our screwdriver. And you can see already that it's pretty loose. We're gonna need to adjust that dramatically. So that's way out of spec. For a hot engine, it should be 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch. And so I'm not gonna measure because we're well above that. So under the transmission here is the adjuster screw and the lock nut. The lock nut is pretty large, so you're gonna need a large wrench to twist that lock nut loose. So I'm gonna be using my vice grips. So turning the adjustment screw counterclockwise will reduce free play, tightening the chain. Turning clockwise will increase free play, or loosen the chain. So let's go ahead and do that. Grab a tape measure here. Literally a tailor tape measure. Hey, if it's gonna work, it's gonna work. All right, so I got it at the 14-inch mark right there. I'm gonna hold it there and push up the chain with a screwdriver. There's the 3/8 mark right there, the third line up from the 14-inch mark. So 1/8, 2/8, which is also known as 1/4, 3/8. So we want it between 1/4 and 3/8. That's exactly where we're at right now. So that chain is adjusted properly. So the torque spec on the inspection cover screws is 120 inch-pounds. So that's 10 foot-pounds. So I'm able to use this torque wrench. There it is. There it is. And finally, we want to go ahead and tighten the stop nut on the adjustment screw. And you want to make sure while you're doing this to not move the adjustment screw. So definitely hold your hex key in there while you're turning the stop nut. This lock nut should be tightened at 20 to 25 foot-pounds. There we go. Now we can go ahead and put back on our foot peg. All right, the foot peg support bracket screws should be torqued to 45 to 50 foot-pounds. Got it at about 47 right now. There we go. There's the first click on the first bolt. And the second click. That's all set. Now it's time to put back in the main fuse. During these last 2 videos of the 10K mile service, we've done a lot of great things. So if you're like me, you're gonna be doing these procedures over a couple of days without riding your bike. I've not ridden my bike before starting part 1 when we did the fall away procedure. And I did that because I wanted to make sure I did a series of procedures before I rode it. I've done some pretty big adjustments, like the throttle cable and the clutch cable. Things are gonna feel a little bit different on the bike. So right now, before moving on to other procedures, I'm gonna go ahead and test ride it. And the next series of videos will come over another couple of days. But test riding the bike, be really careful. Resist the urge to have a destination in mind, like going to work or going grocery shopping. Make sure when you do your initial test ride, stay close to home, ride around in your neighborhood around a couple of blocks. Make sure everything feels good, it's working for you. It wouldn't be great if you're on your way to work and you've already made adjustments and you haven't done your test ride yet, and if something didn't feel right. You want your bike to be set up perfectly for you. Something's not right, come back to your garage and readjust it. So let's get this bike lowered, out of the garage, and do a test ride. Thanks for watching this one, everybody. If you liked this video or if you found it helpful, please go ahead and click on that like button. It helps out this channel an awful lot. And if you have a riding buddy who you feel would find this information useful as well, go ahead and share it with them. Maybe both of you can work in the garage together, sipping a few brews, working on your bikes, doing your 10K mile service. If you're new here, go ahead and click on the subscribe button. This is only part 2 of the 10K service. There are gonna be more videos covering a lot more with the 10K service. If you click on the subscribe button, go ahead and click on that bell icon so you know when I upload videos just like this. Most importantly, stay safe riding out there. Keep your wheels rolling in the right direction. See you later, everybody.